All right, good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you're from. Welcome to another episode of Full Circle. Today, we are going to be doing a Corsace Closed Grand Finals recap and an overall reflection of Corsace Closed as a whole this year. Now, before we start, we would like to plug in that Corsace will be at Anime North this year. It will be from May 26th to May 28th at the Toronto Congress Center, minutes from the Toronto Pearson Airport. Keychains will be sold there for 10 Canadian each, and stickers will also be sold there, one for three and three for seven. Cash is preferred, and there are super limited quantities. And anyone looking to want one will have to grab a convention bag, unfortunately. So the table is kindly hosted by Pichiparu and Namururin. That will be table K13 at Anime North. Corsace will not be at the table, however, we will be around and check Discord for updates. And there is a usual Osu meetup at Anime North on Saturday at the Sheraton Hotel. Once again, if you are interested in any of the Corsace merch this weekend, and you are going to Anime North or know anyone going, please get a keychain for yourself, get some stickers, you know, just get it. It's gonna be good. And going back to the Full Circle episode, once again, today we are going to do Corsace Grand Finals recap. I'm Kay. If you don't know me, I'm a tournament host and referee, and I'm just gonna have everyone introduce themselves in clockwise. So, Sad Shiva, sir, if you could kindly start us off.
Hello, I'm Shiva. I commentate a bunch of stuff. I commentate Corsace Close this year. Yeah, big caster guy. Hi.
And Dio, if you could go next,
Sure,
please.
I will go next. Hi, I'm Dio. I do Osu stuff. It's pretty cool. I like Osu. That's my whole introduction. Takati, you're in.
Hey, I'm Taikani. I'm a commentator and mapper, mostly for Corsace these days.
Awesome. Glad everyone knows each other. And so first, we're gonna start things off for with the Grand Finals weekend. What an amazing match we saw. We had lots of highlights. So first match we're gonna talk about, Emrick versus Henry. That match ended 7-3 going in Emrick's favor, with Emrick winning, of course, and he ended up facing Malashevsky in the match after. I don't know. I think Henry personally defied all expectations. You know, a lot of people thought that he wasn't going to do very well, and he defied all odds. He got 3 points off of Emrick, number 1 in the world, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start it off. I mean, Henry had quite a lot of expectations coming along this match, especially against Emrick, because he kind of proven that his skill cap is capable. He is capable of doing well on multiple maps in the Grand Finals pool, and he kind of proved that going on a crazy, just a 2-point pop off against Emrick later on when Emrick kind of got an early streak of 5-1 up. He just got 2 insane runs on DT1 and No Mod 3, kind of getting a last little dash in before, unfortunately, Emrick finished it off. But it's an unfortunate end to Henry's crazy losers bracket tear throughout this tournament. I think although we expected Emery to do well, we did not expect Emery to be this good throughout the entire tournament. And taking three maps against Emrick, especially considering that Emrick won the entire tournament in the end, it's a respectable way to go. So big props to Emery for getting top 3.
I mean, I think a lot of people were definitely expecting. I feel like this match was ironically less close than maybe people expected, if only because Emrick was performing out of his mind in the Grand Finals weekend and clearly just really wanted to win. Because a lot of the scores from Henry were still very, very good during this match. You saw very close scores on the No Mod 4 and the No Mod 5, for example. Emrick winning those by less than 50,000 points. There were still relatively good scores even before and after the pop-off of 2 points on the No Mod 3 and the DT1 from Henry. So I think a lot of people probably expected this match to be closer, and I think it could have been closer, but Emrick was just kind of tearing it up the entire day that all 3 of these matches happened. So yeah, despite Henry maybe not putting up quite as many points as I think a lot of people might have expected, I think he still looked pretty good on the weekend, and like you said, unfortunate end to the losers bracket run, but pretty solid run overall, and solid last match to end things off.
Yeah, this unfortunately just kind of had to be where Henry's run ends. Very, very good player. I think, he was having troubles with the mental, which we saw a little in the match. That just affected how he played a little bit against Emrick. It's unfortunate that Henry's run had to end there. I think, there was a lot of people who wanted to believe he could take it all the way. But meanwhile, Emrick was putting up like the scores of a lifetime. It was absolutely insane. I remember several times where internally the words tournament PP record were thrown around in regards to some of the scores that Emrick was putting up. So really fantastic plays from Emrick in this set that we were seeing all throughout.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that this grand finals pool not only catered to Emrick's skill ceiling much better, but he was just so much more confident and had such a good drive with him in this grand finals stage. I mean, he set some ridiculous scores in all three of the matches that he played. I think most notably, particularly against Emry, I'm sure we'll talk about the scores in the future in the grand finals between him and Malashevsky, but in this match against Emry alone, he got some ridiculous points. He got a great opening pop-up on Hard Rock 4, getting 3,000 combo on Reason 1,000 Swords with Hard Rock. That's insane. That is crazy. That's a great opening pick. And then on top of that, upsetting a player like Henry on Nomod 4 and Hidden 4. That's just absurd. And then he caps it off with 1.1k combo on Nomod 2 and Nomod 1 consecutively, just finishing it off. It was just a consistent dominance from Emrick. And despite Emry putting up a good effort, as you said before, Emry set some decent scores, man, but Emrick was just too powerful. He was just too good in this match.
I think
Connie's just walked
overall.
off. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Takani's just Takani's stopped.
He's cold.
Oh, I
He's
mean,
cold.
overall, I think Henry's performance as a whole was a really good showing, and with that, we're gonna move on once again. I mean, Henry secured himself a podium placement for Corsace closed when prior, like, nobody really knew him. So for him to just rise to stardom so quickly is a really huge feat. So we're gonna move on to the next match. We're gonna go to the first match of grand finals of the winners bracket side, which will be Malashevsky versus Emrick. And that was the first match which ended in another 7-3. And man, I mean, Malashevsky was the crowd favorite going into this match. Because prior to this, he had pretty much never lost, an individual tournament, or team tournaments to my knowledge. And he has, consistently shown FC after FC and insane scores. Yet, and during this match, we all thought it was going to be a lot closer, 7-6 or 7-5 maybe. And Emrick came out swinging.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that with the expectations being what they were, like there were a lot of people comparing Malashevsky to Vaxe, and I think those comparisons maybe felt a little early, given that he did lose Corsace closed last year. It's not like he's undefeatable in the same way that Vaxe was for years on end, but it's definitely going to put a stop to those types of comparisons, I think. And despite the fact that Malashevsky had a lot of very good scores, I think it was a combination of a couple of things: the map pool being as hard as it was, the ability for Emrick to just continue a pop off, a couple of picks being a little bit more mechanics focused, like the Hard Rock 4, for example, being really mechanics focused this weekend. And I think even without the slight favorability of the pool towards Emrick, the difficulty of the pool combined with how much he clearly wanted to win probably would have had him come out on top regardless, because he put up just absolutely absurd scores pretty much entirely throughout the first round of grand finals. I think if anything looked a little shakier in bracket reset than in the first round, because there wasn't really any doubt in the first round of grand finals who was going to win the first set. I think bracket reset was a little bit better for Malashevsky, but yeah, Malashevsky, I think, pretty much seemed a little bit outscaled on the pool, and wasn't able, I think, to capitalize on the same types of maps that he usually is able to against a lot of players because of that. So I'm really interested to see if that same type of performance happens in other tournaments that are a little bit easier, for example, or if Malashevsky really does kind of just get outscaled at these later stages. I want to know kind of, is it a function of the difficulty of the pool, or is it just Malashevsky maybe starting to get matched by more players, at least by Emrick?
I think after seeing this grand final shot where Emrick took 2 sets from Malashevsky, I think it's safe to say that Emrick's got the confidence and the drive now to be able to commit to tournaments a lot more and giving Malashevsky a lot more of a bigger rival. I think throughout the entire year, I mean, this is the first tournament in 2023 in solo where he's been undefeated. The last time he lost was nearly a year ago in Yasa Summer Cup, if I remember correctly. That was the last time he lost a solo tournament, which is nearly an entire year ago. So I think the definition of Malashevsky just generally is that he's really good and he's really, really consistent. And I really don't think he underperformed this set. I still think he set some really good scores. I still think he gave Emrick a big run for his money, particularly on the Hard Rock 4 and Hard Rock 3. I think those 2 maps were extremely close, huge nail biters, and could have easily flipped the script if Malashevsky was to have won the Hard Rock 4, maybe the Hidden 3. I think there were quite a few variables which could have really, really flipped it. Of course, not to claim Emrick won by luck. Emrick was incredibly powerful throughout the entire series, but there were lots of chances for Malashevsky could potentially slip it. So the scoreline of 7-3 really doesn't reflect how well Ristal played. And I really hope that people don't downplay Ristal's tournament ability purely based off this match, because it really was a kind of a skill cap thing and Emrick just having a really, really damn good weekend.
For sure. It will be the story, absolutely, looking back on this tournament in the future of just, like, Emrick's performances in this grand finals were just incredible, consistently amazing. He wasn't dropping really low scores all weekend, but his like lost points are still really good scores. And it would just be, the other player that pops off. And I can imagine Malashevsky, having trouble with that. There was a moment in finals where even in the player chat, the two talked to each other about their nerves going against names as big as Emrick and Malashevsky. And I think those nerves can absolutely catch up to you in a grand finals like that. Along with that, as you were saying, maybe there's a pretty good chance Malashevsky did get skill capped on the grand finals pool. It didn't look like, he was playing at his best, and it very well could be the case where, this star rating level is just not a level that he's comfortable at, and not a level that he wants to play at. And it would end up being his downfall in this set.
Yeah, I want to add some nuance to the skill cap thing also, because there are some people who are going to take offense to that if there's not some nuance surrounding it. Obviously, he's still putting up very good scores. He's still putting up, solid runs on a lot of maps, and a lot of these maps are relatively close, right? Like, he's getting 700k on the GT1, he's getting 500k on the Nomad 5. I think that is below standard for him, though. Like, most of the maps that you see him play, he is full comboing in just about every other tournament. I understand that this tournament's pools are harder, but compared to his usual standard, I don't feel like he was able to perform up to what the expectations set of him were, particularly like looking at the Nomad 4 during the first round of grand finals compared to his Nomad 4 score in the second round of grand finals, right? Like, the difference between 280k and 510k on that map is pretty massive. And I think it's less about, he's getting 200k on every map, and more, okay, he's not able to actually put up the scores that I think a lot of people were expecting him to be able to put up on a lot of maps. And Emrick was able to, I think, kind of flip it around and put up those types of really ridiculous scores on a lot of maps. There's obviously also some maps where Emrick had a really rough time and Malashevsky had a very good time, i.e. Nomad 3, for example, right? 740k to 380k. The reason why people are not calling Emrick skill capped on this pool is because a lot of the losses were also very close. For example, the Nomad 5 loss in the bracket reset to Malashevsky by 15k. And then Emrick was also actually beating Malashevsky on picks where we expected Malashevsky to be very, very good. For example, the double time 4 in both sets of grand finals, where Emrick was able to come out on top on DT4, which is something that Malashevsky usually has as his specialty, right? That is one of his pocket picks in most matchups. So I think it's less about, oh, he's getting 200k on every map, and more his pocket picks are not working out the way that they usually do, and the kind of average score for him is not close at all to where we usually expect it to be. And because the maps are so hard, the player with just generally a higher skill cap rather than higher tournament consistency ended up being able to win out in this type of a matchup. So I think the nuance here is not that, you know, Malashevsky is just bad on this pool, because obviously that's not what happened. But the nuance is that the pool is so hard that Emrick's skill cap is just better suited to it, rather than Malashevsky being as consistent of a tournament player as he usually is, because that works out really, really well on, I think, anything up to about 8.5 stars or so. We've seen him do very well on pools that hard before as well, but I haven't really seen him play like a really, really high star rating pool like this, where you're closing in on 9 stars for a lot of the mechanics picks. So I wanted to add that kind of nuance before somebody goes on Twitter and starts subtweeting us or whatever, because that always happens whenever you give any opinion. So
so true. So
Yeah.
true. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, to add to the whole, like, the what was mentioned before about the nerves, you know, if you were watching any of their streams, you know, you could literally see them typing to each other, how nervous they were just in each other's presence. Now think about it this way, like, you, like, number one player in the world, and then one of the best tournament players, you know, the scene has ever, for haha, pun intended, the scene has ever seen, haha. But it it just shows a mutual level of respect for each other, but also the fact that they fear each other, you know, it was kind of remarkable. And hindsight is 2020, right? Like, Emrick has the recommended star rating difficulty of like 11 stars, I think. I think that's the recommended
Somewhere around there,
difficulty
yeah.
he has.
Yeah,
It's
it
like
is, yeah.
11 stars. I have no idea what Malashevsky's recommended difficulty. I would assume it's like high up there, like maybe 9, 10. I wouldn't know. But, like, you know, hindsight is 2020, skill cap player on something that was quite literally built to push limits, you know, and, you know, I think drive has a lot to do with that too. Not to say that not to say that Malashevsky wasn't driven. I'm sure he was, but if you had heard Emrick during his stream or prior to the match, you could very much hear the enthusiasm coming from his voice, and just the clear show of will prior to the match, during the match, to win. And he did it. Like, he was very determined. He did what he had to do, and when he won, he was, you know, he was very, very excited. And prior to that, during the Emrick Henry match, Malashevsky asked to join the lobby because they had decided to do a tiebreaker showcase, and Malashevsky joined. Maybe a bit of mental game, because Malashevsky had gotten like 250k on the tiebreaker on that MP, and Emrick got like 130k, so nearly double. And, you know, mental game, fear tactic, I don't know, but I do feel like towards the end it was probably just like, a man, like, things aren't working out for me, what do I do? The nerves are settling in, panic or whatever, which is kind of unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Dio's comparison earlier with the fact that it's more that Emrick suits it better rather than Malashevsky kind of
Yeah,
struggling or being the worst player is such a great way of putting it, like a really, really good way of putting it, because I can 100% agree with that. I really don't feel like it was a matter of Malashevsky just being worse on the day or anything like that. I really just feel like Emrick just felt more comfortable generally, and plus the drive, plus the motivation, plus winning set 1, plus defeating
He really
Emery
maybe it's a
with some
Secretary Son
really
buff.
good
Like he just
scores.
really wanted her. You know, who
It was
knows?
good. It was good, man. Secretary San as well. I mean, come on, who wouldn't want to get the chance to
You want
earn the
her.
victory,
Everyone
to
wants
earn
her.
Secretary San? Yeah. Overall, though, it's a legendary matchup, and I think Emrick is widely regarded as one of, and some people will say that he is currently one of the greatest players of all time, if not currently the best player of all time. Depends on whoever says so. I'm not making any blanket statements. I'm just saying what he's regarded as. But if there is one thing where he hasn't been secured as a king of, it's in tournaments. That's always been claimed by Malashevsky. That's been claimed by other players in the past, like Vaxei. There's not been a time where people have strongly considered Emrick to be at the tippity top. And I
I
think
think the
this tournament
unfortunate
is the start
reality,
of it.
I'll interrupt you there, sorry, but I think the unfortunate reality of that is just he's in a very, okay, to put it very bluntly, a really bad time zone. He is from Australia, as everyone knows. In international tournaments, that is an awful time to play. 15 UTC is, I believe to
OCE diff.
Sydney, it's like 1 a.m. local.
Yeah.
Feel free to correct me.
To be
It's like
fair,
1 a.m.
Vaxei got the GOAT status while being from West Coast USA, where 15 UTC is either 7 or 8 a.m. So, like, I think if you are truly the tournament GOAT, you're going to be it regardless of where you're from. Like, I don't think the time zone matters that much, low-key.
I feel like, but I mean, Sundays are really hard because Emrick's still in school, right?
Yeah,
so
I understand that it makes it a lot harder. I understand that it makes it a lot harder. But the thing that I think proves that is that when it matters, Emrick shows up. Corsace closed, right? He has already won it. Corsace Open, where he played just the grand finals, he showed up and was arguably MVP for every map outside of Tiebreaker, right? Like, the guy just shows up when he needs to anyway. So I think the time zone while I agree it makes it harder for him to like secure that status easily. I think if you're going to be him, you're going to be him regardless of what time zone you're in. So I think that's sorry to interrupt, but I just have like I just think it's really not it makes it hard to play tons of tournaments all the time, but the greatest of all time doesn't need to have 20,000 badges, right? Bubbleman existed in the same era as Vaxei, and people still unequivocally call Vaxei the greatest tournament player of all time instead of Bubbleman, who has like twice as many tournament badges or 3 times as many tournament badges, right?
That's a fair argument.
So I think it does not matter. I think it just does not matter. If you are the best, you're going to be the best regardless of what time zone you're in. And I think Emrick has started to show that more and more as his focus no longer needs to be on solo play quite as much.
Yeah. I mean, one big question is, are we going to see him continue with that insane drive that he's had this tournament? I mean, if we keep this same level of drive from Emrick in future tournaments that he's going to play in, I am so insanely excited to see what he's going to pull off. I mean, we've already seen a huge glimpse of it before Corsace closed, and as you mentioned already before, Dio, in Open Grand Finals, like that was a huge match cost generally for Emrick, kind of single-handedly pushing his team far and beyond, kind of making that finals match kind of irrelevant entirely. So if we continue to see that insane drive from Emrick, and as you mentioned before, kind of continuously trying to make the best performances and kind of prove that he is at the very top, it's a super exciting prospect to see. And we're going to see competition from Malashevsky, which is great. He's been unstoppable for such a long time, and this is the first time in nearly a year that he's lost a solo tournament, and he's finally got someone who he's lost to, and he can have a rival, which is great. It's so exciting. I can't wait to see what Emrick does in the future with tournaments, because if he keeps this drive, man, he's going to pull up some spectacular results, and he's going to be a part of some really legendary matches in the future.
Hear me out. We make more Secretary Son merch, and we just offer it as Corsace prizes. Big brain. That's his motivation right there.
I'm still waiting for the congratulations Emrick art for Secretary Son, unless I haven't seen that already.
True.
Where
actually.
is that?
True.
Sorry
we will get back to production. Maybe we should do that. Production.
Sorry to harass the artists. You guys make fantastic work, but that is all the more reason why we want this. We want to see the congratulations Emrick drawing of Secretary San, give me a little pat on the head and be like, "Good job, bro, you won." Something like that. That'd be
I
really cool.
yeah. But
Good,
yeah,
good icing
genuinely,
on the
like
cake.
Emrick's. I mean, like especially because both of these players are so young too. So to accomplish what they've accomplished at such a young age is truly a feat. Like who else can say like, yeah, I'm like 15 and I'm regarded as one of the goats of this game. Like that's crazy to me. Imagine being a high schooler, like entering high school with like this huge background of prestige in tournaments and like a game as a whole. That to me is insane. But yeah,
Emrick's
like
gonna go to a
congratulations,
party in high
Emrick.
school. He's gonna go to a
True.
party in high school. He's gonna be holding his drink and he'd be like, "They don't know I'm the best host player in the world."
Oh, true and real.
They're just gonna have no idea, and he's gonna be sitting like, "Hee hee ha ha." These
Quick,
guys.
someone make that
I'm pretty
meme
sure
of the
yeah,
guy
I'm
at
pretty
the
sure that
party.
actually happened.
Maybe it has actually. I'm pretty sure Emrick like I
I'm pretty sure
remember
he
this
tweeted about it.
distinctively. He tweeted this like I'm pretty sure like 2 years ago, something like that, when he just got number one, where one of his school friends in class was saying like, "Oh yeah, look at this game called Osu," and he was doing like a live play on his laptop and he was playing terribly, and Emrick just looking at him like in the back of his head, being like, "He doesn't know I'm the best in the world right now, does he? He doesn't know."
That's crazy.
He just thinks I'm a bystander who's never heard of the game. That was a
Yeah,
good tweet.
but
I remember that one.
I mean, yeah, anyways, like, the grand finals match was just an insane showing of skill, of of determination and just sheer grit, like the and you have to think about it this way too. Emrick played 3 matches that day. Because he played
Yeah,
Emrick.
3 best of
He
13.
played against Henry at 14. He had a short break, I think. Um, he played against Malashevsky at 16, and they played bracket reset after like another 15-minute break at 17. So almost basically actually back-to-back matches. So I mean, I would assume that he must have been extremely tired. I understand that his sleep schedule was kind of like a little wonky that weekend, which is why he asked for a later match. But still, to be playing Osu for what I assume to be like, let's be generous and say like he warms up like an hour, so like 13 to like 18 UTC. That is 5 hours of Osu to be playing.
It's a long time. It's a long time. Going back to mental, also, I think that's kind of the one thing that we didn't cover. I don't know whether this was intentional or not, but the I feel like the mental drain on both players is very, very difficult. You were talking about nerves earlier and being able to, kind of hold it together when you are against somebody who has sort of that aura of intimidation around them for most other players. Um, I feel like it makes it much harder to keep mental together. And I think the biggest turning point that we saw in bracket reset was as soon as Emrick got a breakpoint up on the hidden four, he instantly went for the Hard Rock 1 afterwards. This was at, I think, map number 8 was the Hard Rock 1. And I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it was so obvious during the first round of Grand Finals that Malashevsky got really tilted off of the Hard Rock 1 because he missed right in the middle and then capped himself in score. And I don't know if Emrick saw the tilt on stream or people in chat were talking about it or what, but it seemed very intentional that he went for Hard Rock 1 right after getting a breakpoint, and it felt like Malashevsky's mental just instantly disintegrated after that. Like, I feel like that was a major turning point because even after that, he looked very good on the Hard Rock 3 on Sakura trip, but Emrick just seemed to have a big leg up, got 500k on that, and then won No Mod 1 afterwards to win the tournament. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it seemed very intentional to go for that Hard Rock 1, where there was very obvious tilt if you were watching the live stream from Malashevsky. So I think either good use of mental boom or manipulation of it, or he just got very lucky in terms of his pick order because it felt like that was the complete turning point. You'll never know, but it felt like that was a major turning point. It felt like that was the point where Malashevsky was defeated, was as soon as that Hard Rock 1 was picked, because he still had points left up, but it just felt like I don't know. Just from casting it, from watching it, it felt like that was the point of no return.
I mean, after Malashevsky took it 3-1 in like the early stages of the match, Emrick just won 6 maps in a row. And especially winning, as you mentioned before, on Sakura Trip after losing it just barely, it had to have put a bit of stress on Malashevsky, surely, right? Considering that he won it by, I think it was like less than 3k, 2.9k points. Extremely close and definitely a scary prospect. But having the first match and bracket reset kind of slowly slip from your fingers, especially after taking a 3-1 lead in the bracket reset match, I can 100% imagine mental being a big factor in this. Emrick just swinging in momentum, just swinging map after map after map after map, and either getting a dramatic clutch, for example, on multiple maps in the last 6 that he played. It's just mental is a big contributor, of course. Yeah, momentum helped them a ton. And as you mentioned on stream, he was faltering a bit in the mental game, and he did slip up on a few points where we could have seen him win more. Of course, we talk about the Sakura Trip. We could have also talked about the Hidden 4, where Emrick won by about 27k. I think those 2 maps were both maps that were very big potential for Malashevsky to win on, and even the playing field a bit. And this is why, once again, I think it's very safe to say that the scoreline doesn't reflect how good this match actually was. There were so many close points, so many. It could have easily gone a different way if there was just one small error at one slightly different time, or if an error was at a different stage in the map. Everything could have changed off of such minor changes. But Emrick just kept it going. He won the mental game. He slayed. He kept himself over Malashevsky, and he took the win. He won 6 maps in a row in the bracket reset. That's insane. Yeah,
it is. And with that, like, again, we will never know what could have happened. There are plenty of what ifs that could have happened in that grand finals match, and we will still question them to this, into the future. But once again, congratulations to Emrick and his win. Congratulations to the entire podium. And we're going to move on to the next segment, which is just a general reflection of Corsace Closed as a whole. And we're going to start off with qualifiers, of course. And actually, we can talk a little bit about the invitationals of, who was invited and stuff. So, yeah, so qualifiers, Malashevsky came on top. Emrick, went second. Wow, wow, like and the difference between them was pretty stark. It just, dude, like who are these people? Like Malashevsky topped the qualifiers 8.1, and then Emrick came in at a 7, and Rimuru came at a 6. So there's an entire point of difference between these 3, which is bonkers because that same difference goes from 3rd to 9th.
I think this is kind of the I think this is kind of the encapsulation of the quote-unquote tournament consistency that you talk about when we think about players like Bubbleman and Malashevsky versus players like Vaxi and Emrick. Because Emrick ended up winning the tournament. He had a better run in grand finals. He lost the winners finals and went through losers bracket. But earlier on in the tournament, when the pools were not quite as difficult as grand finals, Malashevsky just looked better pretty much every round. I think semifinals was the one round where Malashevsky maybe looked a little bit weaker than Emrick Henry, but aside from that, he looked better and more consistent pretty much every round, and that applies to qualifiers as well. And this is how he wins so many tournaments, is that he's super consistent when the pools don't get above like 8.5 stars, right? Which is sufficient for pretty much every tournament, right? You don't need to worry about the pools getting to 9 stars in pretty much anything outside of either Corsace Closed or like gimmick difficulty tournaments, right? So this is how you become a really, really, really good tournament player and somebody who can just win badges whenever they want, is you be super, super consistent up to a certain difficulty rating on pretty much any pool, and that's what Malashevsky's good at. You want to average 600k on the qualifiers map pool, which is hold on. 7.8 stars was the Nomad 1-star rating. Sorry, I had to scroll a little bit. You want to average 600k on a nearly 8-star pool, right? This is what gets you first. I think that's pretty much the big explanation on the qualifiers. Anything to talk about in terms of like who is down in bottom 6 or bottom 8-ish? Or I think the order was generally pretty predictive of where people ended up, except for Emrick.
I was gonna say Taquito too. Taquito did.
Oh yeah, Taquito
like
Emrick. Yeah, Taquito Emrick.
in qualifiers.
Taquito Emrick ended up boosting their placements by 4 each, which is pretty good. Also, Rimuru ended up really underperforming, I feel like, in the tournament overall.
Yeah, in bracket
That was pretty
stage,
unlucky.
I think compared to his qualifiers performance, I was looking forward to way more, considering he got top 3. I think Rimmer is a prime example of how if you can be consistently good in the average department, that helps you a lot. He got so many high-ish seedings. He got top 6 at least in 7 maps out of the 10 maps in the qualifier stage. I think that's just an example of having good versatility and good consistency get you through qualifiers, but unfortunately, he just didn't make it happen in bracket stages. He, I think, got a bit fortunate with the FF at the start from Ninarek, but after that, he just couldn't get any further. He couldn't get any wins, unfortunately. I think there could have been way more potential. Rimmer Factor has always been a thing where he's more than capable of pulling some really unique maps and just winning it. But yeah, I think that's a really unfortunate underperformance from Rimmer in the bracket stage. But granted, definitely a plaudable performance in the qualifiers. Anybody else want to speak? I can continue.
I don't think I have really anything much to add for qualifiers, given we have so many rounds of the tournament to go through. I think qualifiers was
I mean qualifiers are
largely. I think it was largely predictive. There were a couple of people who surprised, namely Taquito Emrick, surprising in a good way, forcing down, for example, White Cat into top 9 or top 12. Forcing Rimuru down into top 12. A lot of, I think, the reason why the qualifiers ended up not being so predictive is because of Taquito and Emrick. Taquito beat Rimuru, Emrick beat White Cat. Emrick also ended up beating Zudinator, but she went down in 7th, 8th. Taquito ended up beating Karcher, who also pretty heavily overperformed, got 13th seed in qualifiers, and ended up beating both Demonical and Chaconi and losers bracket. But I think the big reason why qualifiers ended up not being quite as predictive is players like Suwagi and Rimuru, both being taken down, and White Cat being taken by Taquito and Emrick respectively. So the two players who overperformed a lot ended up impacting the bracket in such a way that qualifiers ended up not really showing or not really being quite as predictive as I think they usually would be, but still ended up looking relatively good if you ignore the kind of standout run that Emrick and Taquito had. I think they end up looking very, very close to what the overall bracket had in it. It was basically Emrick, Taquito, and Karcher, who had really heavy, good runs compared to where their qualifier placements were.
Yeah, Karcher had a really rough early start with the PC bugs and whatnot. He was struggling a lot with the it's kind of happening at the moment with some of top players for OSAs, that with the little static bugs and the kind of stutter glitches that you get. Karcher was one of those big victims of that issue, but it got fixed in his match against Demonical in the losers bracket, and that was when we finally got to see Karcher pull some really good scores and do some really good plays. Just unfortunate that despite ending up winning against Demonical, unfortunately he couldn't really go too much further. I think he ended up winning another game after that and then getting knocked out finally. But it was a good run and a relief for me, at least, because I'm a big fan of Karcher. I think he's an amazing player, and I was a bit gutted to see him kind of be a little bit underseeded in the qualifier stage. But after learning about his issue and then seeing him play well later on in the bracket stage after those issues were fixed, give me a little bit of hope, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I think going out of qualifiers, the bracket looked very, very scary, and with that, we are going to move to the round of 16, just like an overall reflection. Not a lot of close matches. The only one that was pretty close was White Cat against Demonical, and that went 6-4, which was like kind of shocking. But I think that it was like how Dio mentioned earlier, where it's like tournament consistency versus skill cap. Like White Cat was a former number one. He is known for playing high star maps. So I think because like the star rating is a bit more quote unquote normal for tournament players. That was probably a big reason why the match was so close. And Demonical performed fairly well to my knowledge, if I remember correctly. So it's not like he was doing bad by any means either. And I don't even think White Cat was doing that bad. I think it was just really unlucky, like just really bad misses too. So that's just my take on round of 16 as a whole.
Yeah,
It's like,
I think for the Demonical White Cat match, it was kind of like a mismatch of skill set almost. Like White Cat bans out reading and Demonical bans out some aim maps, but I think Demonical's skill set is less geared toward taking down someone like White Cat, who is a little bit more well-rounded. I think Demonical is a really good like reading speed specialist, but he lost one of the speed picks. Ended up winning one of the stream pick in Nomad 2 after that, which is usually a White Cat pick. Ended up upsetting on a Hard Rock map also by about 20k. But I think White Cat is just more well-rounded as a player and also still had specialties left up near the end of the match, like the full combo on Dishonor. So I think that ended up really determining the outcome of the match. And then from there, I think the rest of the round of 16 was, like you said, not super interesting. The only other really interesting result is like Ciccone beating Emrick, who ended up getting third in the tournament.
Yeah.
oh yeah, loses
that
bracket
result's
run of a
pretty interesting.
lifetime.
That
Yeah.
I think the round of 16 wasn't too crazy. I think the only matches we already mentioned, Demonical White Cat and then Ciccone upsetting Emrick. But we all know what happened with Emrick after that. He wanted revenge and just went on a complete tear later on. I'm sure we'll talk about that very soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. One other thing, very interesting, and we haven't been talking about this at all, but I wanted to bring attention to this because I noticed it while doing a little bit of prep for this, looking at the challenge last night. Taquito also lost in round of 16. He lost to Zudinator. So our number 3 and number 4 players both made runs from losers bracket round 1 all the way to the end of losers bracket, which is very funny. I don't know when the last time I've actually.
Free, you're right.
I don't know when I've actually seen that the last time. Like, two people in top 4 losing in round 1 of a tournament, which is kind of crazy. Usually you only see one run like that, and usually they only get so far, right? Like, usually you see a run like Karcher's, where he loses round 1 to Suwagi, and then makes it to losers round 3 and ends up losing to Taquito. Not 2 of them where they get all the way into top 4, which is really crazy. And that's why I drew attention to them when we were talking about like how predictive the qualifiers were, because these 2 players lost in round 1 and then proceeded to win either side of the losers bracket. To boot, they were on
that's
different
crazy,
sides of the
actually.
losers bracket the entire way through. So they both just went through the entire losers bracket unopposed, and then finally ended up meeting in losers round 5, where Emrick eventually ended up coming out on top because he was just on a tear of all tears, right, during that part of the tournament.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Emrick
mean,
literally made the longest possible run to the end of the losers bracket, to the grand finals stage. There is no other run that gives you that many matches in a row. It is losing round of 16 winners bracket and making the loser run all the way to grand finals. Literally, I think he played the most matches out of literally any player in the tournament.
probably. I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah, probably. Yeah, definitely. Because Emrick and Malus came from the winner's side, and then Emrick beat out Taquito. So yeah, he did because he had 2 potentials. He did. But moving on to quarterfinals. Excuse me. Moshins versus Taquito was super close, which it was like the universe was out of balance. Karcher versus Demonico went to tiebreaker. Ninaric versus MCY4 also went to tiebreaker. So it's completely night and day in the losers bracket compared to like whatever happened during round of 16. Like all of the losers bracket matches were so close. Well, except for Emrick Crystal. Unfortunately, Crystal lost 6-0.
Yeah, I think the losers bracket here is a really good indicator of how close in terms of skill level a lot of these players actually are. And I think it's interesting to talk about that in terms of players like Mustache and Neneric in particular, because a lot of people, I think, kind of discounted them going into the tournament as Neneric is a speed one trick and Mustache is kind of overshadowed by a lot of the rest of Team Poland during OWC and hasn't had a lot of really high level team tournament performances. So I think a lot of people weren't really paying attention to him. But Mustache actually looked pretty good against Malashevsky in the first round of winners bracket in round of 16, despite losing 6-1. I had actually casted both of Mustache's matches in this tournament. He looked like pretty good in that first match. Obviously, Malashevsky looked better, but I mean, I don't know what you're expecting. If you're expecting him to look better than Malashevsky, you have some high expectations, right? So I think it was really interesting to see, because that's the worst match that Taquito had was against Mustache and against Karcher before losing to Emrick. Both of those matches were 6-4. So Mustache really did push Taquito quite a lot, and on hidden tech or reading as well, which is not where you expect him to usually get pushed to kind of the limit there, almost getting taken to tiebreaker. So really, really interesting set of events in the losers bracket. Like you said, winners bracket not as interesting. Kriller beating Rimuru 6-1 is the only upset in winners bracket. Other than that, it's all 6-1 or 6-2 and to be expected results.
Yeah, I like it's really interesting because maybe there was a bit of a better skill balance, like, or whatever balance in the losers bracket. Who knows? But I guess we like the semifinals matches. Yeah, well, I guess we'll talk about the semifinals matches right now. But semifinals was more interesting, in my opinion. We had a tiebreaker, which was Zudinita versus MCY4. Closer matches because the potential between Karcher and Taquito went 6-4, like you said earlier. Ciccone versus Karcher went 6-3. Winners bracket finally like saw something a little bit better than a 6-1, which was a 6-3, which was Malashevsky versus Suwagi. And then a 6-2 with Emrick versus Kriller. Still, it didn't feel as exciting, save for maybe the tiebreaker between Zudinate and MCY4, but still, like, harder pool, like, really hard matchups to predict.
Yeah, I mean, semifinals was a little bit more eventful. I think this was safe to say this is when we got to see the start of Enry's ridiculous losers bracket rampage, taking down two tournament gods in Zudi and White Cat, beating them both 7-2, and making a name for himself as a really formidable speed player. I think he was kind of always known in the back of quite a few people's heads that he's good on the double time, but not to the degree that he displayed in the semi-final stage. I might have got the swallow wrong. It might have been 6-2. Regardless, he won and his opponents got 2 points. Simple as. He did so good in these two matches, and it only kept on going from there. On top of that, he got number one. Oh, sorry, I'm going a bit too far ahead of myself. I'll hold that stat for later. I'll talk about it later. But on top of that, in semifinals, Suwagi posed the biggest threat to Marshevsky's run since ages ago, getting at that time being the only player to get over 2 points against him with 3. I mean, nothing too crazy, but still a kind of a thing to notice where Suwagi put up the biggest fight against Malashevsky. That's something that I wanted to mention as well. And you already talked about the tiebreaker between Zuneda and MCY4. Extremely close match with some incredible storyline as well. These guys are rematching from back in the roundtable qualifiers, where one of them would be chosen to go to LA, and MCY4 took it in the end. But Zudinea got her revenge. She excelled much more on the tapping mechanics heavy maps and managed to win the TB, which thankfully for Zudinea was kind of more in her favor. Kind of the high BPM hidden jump comfort maps more definitely in Zuneda's favor, I'd say. More high BPM jumps, sorry, not hidden specifically, but high BPM jumps, high BPM aim, a little bit more on Zuneda's edge, in my opinion. So a good tiebreaker to fit her, but on top of that, just performed great. And Yeah, pretty eventful semifinals, and the finals in terms of Emrick's performance just doesn't end. It doesn't end from there.
Yeah, overall, it's like really, really good matches. Decent showing of everything that had happened. Moving on to finals, which was kind of a reverse of what happened during quarters. It was a really eventful. I would say it was a pretty eventful, um, pretty eventful winner's side versus not as like the scoreline doesn't do it justice. So because seven, you see 7-2, 7-2, 7-3. You really do not want to disregard how close some of the maps were, which it was literally just some of the most the unluckiest misses and random it's actually insane how unlucky some players can get. But yeah, Suwagi lost to Takedo 7-2, and this is where Takedo really ramps up because prior to that, like Dio mentioned, the early rounds was not his best, and then he was just like, yeah, I'm about to destroy Suwagi 7-2.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here is losers bracket was. I hate using unlucky misses. I don't know. Luck is a skill. I don't know. If you were meant to win, you were gonna win. And if it's that close, then it's going to be like 7-4 or 7-5 or something instead of 7-2. I don't I don't know. Is that mean? I don't think those score lines are just unlucky. I think
Nah,
Takedo
I don't
Emrick
think
kind
it's
of
mean.
gapped. I think they just kind of gapped in the losers bracket.
I mean, yeah,
Suwagi,
yeah. Go on,
yeah.
carry on, Dio, carry on.
Okay, yeah. Suwagi, unfortunately, I think just Takedo was displaying higher skill cap here, and Suwagi obviously a very good player, um, but I think Takedo had a bit of an advantage in terms of overall skill set. He has speed advantage over Suwagi. He has reading matched with Suwagi as well, and aim is not prevalent enough in modern map pools for Suwagi to really take advantage of that. And then I think the expectation was for Enri to get through after the semifinals weekend because Enri was far and away the best player in semifinals. If you look at average score, for example, Enri actually had higher average score than both Emrick and Malashevsky in the semifinals, and I believe, or no, had similar average score to Malashevsky in semifinals, and much higher average score than Emrick in semifinals. So looked really, really good, and I think continued looking that good in the losers bracket in finals as well. And I feel like that's why the expectation was kind of that Enri was going to get through, despite being against players like Kriller and eventually against Takedo as well. I feel like winners bracket weirdly enough went about as expected, right? We talked about expectations from the start of the tournament that Malashevsky was just expected to win this tournament. And so being expected to win the tournament, you're also expected to win winners finals. And I think a lot of people expected it to be relatively close, which it was. Emrick took the most points off of Malashevsky that anybody had all tournament up until that point. And eventually Malashevsky won the match. I feel like finals was very predictable almost in that I think it turned out how a lot of people were expecting, save with maybe for Takedo really popping off against Suwagi.
Yeah, and as we are already talking about, the Enri rampage just continues, beating Kriller and Takedo 72 and 73 respectively. Also, I believe you mentioned this before, dear, and I want to bring it back up. He got #1 in stats for the final stages, outshining both Malashevsky and Emrick in terms of general overall performance. That's something that's very impressive and something that I think gave me and quite a few other people a lot more confidence in Emri going into the grand finals, really flexing out his skill ceiling more and more and taking down players who are more than capable of becoming podium players in this tournament. Kriller and Takedo both kind of having similarities in terms of all three of them kind of having relatively similar skill sets, all being very familiar on the hidden, all being very well-rounded, and all being just generally consistent in their performances. I think the only unique difference here is that Kriller might be a bit of the outlier in the tapping mechanics, but aside from that, these guys have quite a lot of overlying skill sets, so it really was a big tight clash. But Emrick just kept on going and going and going and outshined the likes of Emrick and Malashevsky in the final stages with high SR as that. I think it was average like 8 stars, 8.5 stars around there. Absolutely absurd. And it was pretty good stuff from Emrick, and grand finals didn't disappoint either.
Yeah, so, we're just gonna move on to grand final. I mean, we already talked about that, so I don't think we need to go over it again.
We do
We
not.
we went over it pretty extensively, but yeah, grand finals, super awesome. Now we're just gonna move on to like just individual any specific players. We talked about Enrain and Takedo, but let's talk about like some of the other people. I like Carter had some really unfortunate issues, which like lag. I also think everyone at the time was experiencing really bad lag issues, and like you know, he didn't do as well, which is kind of unfortunate in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know. Is there anyone that you guys think was an unexpected run other than like I guess Takedo and Henry?
Anyone got a player? Because I've got one player who hasn't got necessarily a run, but an impressive line altogether.
Yeah, I mean, are we just gonna go on to our player reveals? Because I mean,
I
we
guess
can
so.
talk-
We can.
Yeah, because
We're gonna.
we can talk about specific runs.
We can move on to
I
that,
think
but yeah, we're just gonna
I
do
think
like
we've
some
kind
player
of talked
acknowledgements.
about those already. I think
Yeah.
the only other one that I would want to mention is like Karcher going from 13th seed into top 8? Top 8. But aside from that, I think a lot of people either had expected runs or relatively disappointing runs, which we don't really want to bring attention to. Let's leave those where they are.
Yeah, so yeah, we're just gonna move on to player acknowledgements. So for this, everyone had a personal choice of a player, which was like a best improved, like super awesome overperformer or something. But yeah, so I guess Chiba, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so the player that I kind of chose to spotlight over, despite everyone kind of we've talked about so many good players in this tournament, but I think despite tragically going 0-2 in the tournament generally, one singular match that Nineric played against MCY4 single-handedly took down so many doubters from this guy. It's unbelievable. So many people, and I mean so many people, disregarded Nineric as a pure speed one trick, not going to get anywhere, not flexible, just ban to normal 5 and you win, forehead. That was completely thrown away when he took MCY4 to tiebreaker. Particularly excelling in the aim and hard rock department, those two skill sets really helped push him forward, along with his really strong, really heavy tapping mechanics that helped him out in other maps as well, at the DT1. It's just really good for me personally to see, reassuring that Nineric got the showcasing that he deserved. Really, he needed a bit of justice. I'm sure he got a lot of unfair slander when he was invited to the tournament, but he proved that he was a formidable foe. And I think people are going to be a lot more worried about him. I don't think it's just going to be a matter of ban speed, lol. I think he's going to have some better performances now that he's kind of known as a bit of a bigger threat in other skill sets, like we already mentioned, aim and hard rock. And Ninneric's kind of the player that I wanted to mention because I feel like he got the recognition that he deserved in that tournament despite going 0-2.
I have a similar player, so I'm gonna go next since I know Kay and Sakani have slightly different players. So my shout out is to Mustache. Did only get 1 point against Malashevsky, but looked relatively competitive on a lot of maps. For example, on hidden low AR reading, there was actually Malashevsky disconnected, and they had to play the map a second time. And had they kept the scores from the first round, Mustache would have won and ended up losing the map because they played it twice. And then still got like 700k on the Nomad 5, got about 500k on the Nomad 2, got 500k on one of the Hard Rock picks. Like, looked pretty competitive in the match overall compared to, I think, a lot of other players aside from Malashevsky, right? Which is kind of an unfair bar to compare to. But looking at the scores that Mustache was putting up, I think he would have had a very good time against a lot of other players in the tournament at that point. And kind of showed that for sure against Taquito in losers bracket round 1. Again, reminder, Taquito ended up getting 4th in the tournament. Mustache brought him to 6-4, almost to tiebreaker. I think ended up just running out of picks at the end because 2 of the Hard Rock picks, 2 out of 3 of the Hard Rock picks were alt maps. Both Magicats and Canverse ended up being alt picks, which Taquito was just favored on, the better aim control player. And Nomad 2 being 210 BPM, Myths Orbis, a little bit out of Mustache's range as a stream player, usually tends to prefer slightly lower BPM streams. So I think on a different pool in the same difficulty range, probably ends up either forcing tiebreaker or winning the match, but looked very good against Taquito. And I think for somebody who tends to get a little overshadowed by a lot of the other members of Team Poland during OWC, by the legacy of players like Bartek and Rafis during matches like that, by the pop-off scores on specialty maps by players, for example, like Michny or Wypan, I think ended up looking really, really good during the first 2 rounds of Corsace Close, despite going 0-2. For example, beating Taquito on No Mod 4, beating Taquito on Hidden Tech in the Hidden 3, beating Taquito on Double Time 4 on High AR Reading DT. So ended up looking actually relatively good. I wanted to shout him out for, his performance during the first 2 rounds of the tournament.
Connie, why don't you to go next?
All right. My chosen player was Taquito. Throughout the tournament, I continually, publicly doubted Taquito's performance. I was, worried from the start that he wasn't going to perform, and I think I put a lot of predictions on Full Circle that all ended up being wrong. That said that Taquito would lose in individual matches. Not a player that I personally expected to perform after, his initial bout in round of 16. But Taquito really proved himself in the losers bracket, continually taking down player after player. And, these aren't, just like stock players they got from the Osu factory. Like, this is, you start with Mustache, a very close, almost tiebreaker match. You go into Kolibet C number 3, Karcher, then Tsuwagi, which was an absolute blowout from Taquito with the 7-2. It was just, Taquito was looking unstoppable in that match specifically, where it didn't look like Tsuwagi even had any options after a little while. And finally going down 7-3 to Emrick. Taquito put up the performance of a lifetime. Seed 8 getting 4th place. I think it's absolutely just worth mentioning and, shouting out that performance that, I personally did not think he was going to be able to do, but absolutely proved me wrong.
And last but not least, my player that I chose was Emrick, who was our 3rd place podium person. It was really hard to choose someone else's podium, but I think Emrick was like the exception because he truly deserved it. It was mentioned earlier, he seeded 7th. He lost in a round of 16, the very first match. And then he had a couple of close matches thereafter. And when he got to the later parts of the tournament, he just gunned it. He did like literally 0 to 60, like all gas, no brakes. And he looked so good. He performed well, and everybody sees him as like, an up and coming player, and maybe not even up and coming anymore. I think now you can rightfully say that he's solidified himself into a place where people see him as an absolute tournament menace, that he is truly capable of showing up when he needs to show up. And Corsace Close was the perfect opportunity for him to prove everyone and prove everyone wrong, prove to everyone that he's like way more than just like a speed 1 trick or whatever, which I think he was like before he started playing tournaments, he was like very high up on the leaderboard and was known for speed, but he's so much more than that. He does hidden, he does tech, he can do so many other things. And to see him shine like this is truly, truly, a good opportunity for him, and he will continue to do very well in tournaments. And with that, I think we can properly say that this is the end of Full Circle. And we're gonna do another shout out, basically. So if you missed it at the beginning of the stream, we are doing Corsace at Anime North, which is gonna be May 26th. And that's gonna be at the Toronto Congress Center. Minutes from the Toronto Pearson Airport. Keychains will be 10 CAD each. Stickers, if you're buying one, will be $3. And if you're buying 3, they'll be 7. Cash is preferred because it is a convention. And it's very limited, super, super limited quantities. And if anyone is wanting to buy one, you basically need someone who has a pass, or you need to have a pass yourself. We are kindly hosted by Pichi Paru and Nemu Urin, and that is table K13 in the artist alley K13. And Corsace as an entity will not be at the table, but will be around as individuals. So please check the Discord for updates. And of course, there's an Osu meetup, I believe, on Saturday at the Sheraton Hotel. So once again, if you want the Corsace keychain, got unlucky during the giveaways, you didn't win Corsace closed. I don't know, you weren't invited. This is your chance. You want her. You want her.
You
That's
need
what you
her.
want. You need
want
her.
her, you
need
need
her.
her.
Yeah,
You will
but
travel the country. You will go around the
or
world
you're
if you're
just gonna
European for
bug
her.
someone going to Anime North like, I need this keychain. It's gonna be at this
Harass your
table. It's
friends to
10
buy the
CAD.
keychain now. You will do it for Secretary Sun.
You
Sorry, I'm
will.
hypnotizing.
It's okay. But anyways, thank you everyone for watching Full Circle. I'm Kay, and we will see you next week.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.